So what I discovered when I was figuring out like why did he cheat? That was a constant question. And as I listened to men speak about man's sexual nature and desire and things like that, and just men speaking candidly about why men cheat, I realized that the bottom line is that they don't need a reason to cheat. Men cheat because they can and because they want to, right? And oftentimes they believe they can get away with it. So that is why. And so it has nothing to do with the woman that they're with, their wife. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with their own internal issue, situation, trauma, things they haven't dealt with. It has nothing to do with the woman. But I I know for myself, I internalized his cheating to a certain extent. Like, is there something wrong with me? But I quieted that down because I realized that how would I ever know if there's something wrong if he doesn't express it? So even before I had the proof of him cheating, those thoughts would come into my mind. But then I realized if he's not willing to talk about it, this is just something he wants to do. And after I got the proof of his cheating, and like I said, all of that started unfolding as I was listening to men speak about cheating men, I realized that men can be actually happy in their marriage and still cheat because it's something inside of them. It's not necessarily that their woman did something wrong. And I would say 99% of the time, it has nothing to do with whether their woman did something that they didn't like. A woman can't make a man cheat. It has to be something in that man that he desires to do. And so once I came to that understanding that men cheat because they want to, men cheat because they can and they believe it's something they can get away with. It literally has nothing to do with the woman. It has nothing to do with whether a woman was a good woman, a bad woman. It's all on that man. And I could raise my hand and attest to that because even with me believing at one point that my ex was cheating on me, and then at a certain point knowing he was cheating, I still did not cheat because that was my personal morals and standards for myself. So even though I had been cheated on, yeah, I could have quote unquote cheated back, but I chose to maintain my own integrity. I chose not to go against my own morality and my own standards just because the man that had been married to was cheating. And so it's the same way with that man. If that man is cheating, is one simple answer to why he's cheating. It's simply because it's what he wants to do. It has nothing to do with you as a wife. It has nothing to do with whether you did this right or that right or were you satisfying him. None of that has anything to do with why a man cheats. Men can be perfectly good and happy with their spouse and still cheat. It has nothing to do with the woman. It is all on the man. The man is the reason that he cheats. If nobody's pushing him to do it, it's what he wants to do, one way or the other. It's what that man wants to do. And an unaccountable man would try to flip it and make it seem like the woman is the reason. But no, the real reason that a man cheats is just because they is something they wanted to do. They don't need a reason. They don't need a viable reason to cheat. If a man wants to cheat, he's going to. If he wants to step outside of his marriage and have extramarital affairs, he's gonna do it. Not because the woman didn't cook dinner, not because the woman didn't clean, not because the woman didn't satisfy him in the bedroom. None of that has to do with a man's logic or reason for cheating. Men don't even need a reason. It's just something they want to do. And I believe most men don't understand consequences until they're living through them. That's just my belief in studying men. They don't understand consequences until they're actually living through it. And that's why it's important for a woman to have her own boundaries when it comes to her relationship, things that are going to be non-negotiable. If you didn't sign up for a polygamous situation, a situation where your husband can have multiple partners, a situation where your husband could be disrespectful to you, then you have to draw your line in the sand. You have to draw your line in the sand. And, you know, I think that's necessary because a lot of men don't learn until they're dealing with the actual consequences of their action. Men, a good majority of them, don't look into the future of their decisions. They just make a decision and then they live with whatever the fallout is. Even if the fallout affects their children negatively, they don't care. They just deal with whatever the fallout is after the fact. And that's why the onus is really on the woman. I don't want to go too deep, but I really believe a lot of the narratives, the stories, the things that we're told about the male and female dynamic in a marriage are totally off. I see too many instances of illogical men. They try to act like women are so emotional and they just don't have it together. But I see way too many instances of men who are exactly that. They may not be emotional like a woman, but they're very illogical. What they do doesn't make sense to a person that wants certain outcomes for their life. And I guess that was why for a while at dealing with the aftermath of a cheating spouse, I kept asking myself, like, why would he do that? But I've come to understand that men don't really have the logic that we were led to believe they have. Because if they did, they would be able to see into the future of their decisions. They will be able to look at their decisions and say, okay, if I do this, then this is going to happen. And a lot of men don't do that. Now, there's a flip side to that, but I'm not going to talk about that because that's a little deep. But if they're a normal functioning man, I think normal functioning men don't typically look at their decisions in the moment and forecast it into their future. They look at their decisions in the moment and they just act on what they're feeling at that moment. And they don't think about the things that are attached to them. And I'm specifically talking about married men who've actually taken the step to make a covenant commitment. They don't think about the outcome of those decisions. They don't think about the residual impact of their decision making. They don't think about it. They just do it. And then whoever gets hurt, whoever gets negatively affected, okay, whatever. That's how I see a lot of men operating. Not just my situation, but just listening to other situations. I think we are sold a bill of goods about men being so-called logical. There are logical men out there. There's always exceptions. But I think the rule is that most men are not logical. And this is why, as women, we have to collect the data and make decisions based on what we see. And that's something that I had to do in the midst of my marriage. As I was collecting data on the person that I married and started to see that the image that he portrayed, the image that he gave me throughout our dating engagement, it wasn't matching up. Even the image that he was portraying in church versus at home, it wasn't matching up. And I was kind of appalled to see a man portray one thing in a one setting and then just do the opposite the next minute. But then, and possibly the man that I was married to, there are other issues going on with, but again, just just making this general, there are men out here who are not operating on logic and reason. They're not. Because if they did, they would be able to look at what they're doing or look at something they're about to do and say, once I do this, what happens next? And it seems like a lot of men are crying because they're making these horrible decisions and then the fallout happens. And then it's like, how dare I have to deal with the consequences of my horrible decision making when that's just life, period. If you make a bad decision, you got to deal with it. Just like my decision to marry a man that Although I tried my best to vet him, I fell short. So my consequence for not fully vetting this man or vetting him on the most perfect level is that I attach my life to mm, an adult delinquent. I guess that's the best way to say. I attached my life to an adult delinquent, and I had to deal with the fallout of that adult delinquent. And I had to hold myself in order and hold my standards together in the midst of an adult delinquent not doing what he was supposed to do. In the midst of an adult making decisions that didn't just affect me, but it affected his own children. I had to deal with the backlash and the fallout of that. But I also had to maintain my own standards, my own morality in the midst of that. I couldn't lash out at him because I had married an adult delinquent. And a lot of times, these men, they're not being honest. They're adult delinquents. They're making adult delinquent decisions. And then they are getting upset because the ripple effects go out into the future of their life for years and years, maybe decades to come. They might have to deal with the fallout of their poor decisions. But the problem is when they were in the midst of thinking about those things or trying to do those things, they weren't thinking about what happens in 5 years, what happens in 6 months. They're not thinking about any of that. They're only thinking about what I want in this moment. And so this is why I say you're only responsible for what you do. So I'm responsible for the fact that I married an adult delinquent, but I'm not responsible for him cheating. That was his decision. I didn't do anything to contribute to him cheating. I'm not the reason he cheated. He cheated because it's something he wanted to do. And I would just say for wives in general, stop internalizing your husband's cheating. That's his issue. Leave it at his feet. Let God deal with him. Stop internalizing his cheating. It has nothing to do with you. That man is cheating because it's something he wants to do or something he believes he can get away with. That's it and that's all. It doesn't mean you're not a good woman. It doesn't mean that you didn't cook or clean right. It doesn't mean that your bedroom activity wasn't on point. It means none of that. It just means that man wanted to do what he wanted to do and he did so. And unfortunately, he did it in an adult delinquent type of manner to where now you're going to probably be holding the bag to deal with the cleanup, especially if there were children involved. For me, I'm glad there were no biological children involved between my ex and myself. However, there were children involved, and that was the unfortunate part. He probably did the most damage to his biological children in his adult delinquent behavior. And he didn't even bat an eyelash at it. So that's just what I wanted to get out, that men cheating it's not anything new. But what I hope is coming out of these experiences that wives might be going through is that don't blame yourself. That man is cheating because he wants to, period. He wants to do it. He desires extracurricular situations. So he doesn't care who it hurts, right? Which is indicative of a mindset that man has. If he's doing things and not concerned about who it hurts and how it's affecting others, that's telling. And you just have to collect the information based on what he's doing, and you got to pivot and move accordingly. And that's what I had to do. Once I understood that, okay, this is how he's going to move, I had to pivot my life. And I had to do it in a strategic manner. Because if I had did it emotionally, if I had did it vindictively, if I had done it any other way than strategically, it could have gotten bad, right? Because there's so many moving parts when a man steps out of his marriage. It's so much that's being impacted and affected that adult delinquent husband is not even realizing. And it's unfortunate, but it happens. And just bottom line, ladies, don't blame yourself because that man cheated. You're not the reason. He cheats because he wants to cheat. It has nothing to do with you, what you lack or what you're not up to par with. It has nothing to do with it. It's his decision, period, point blank in the discussion. And that's just something that I had to reason through in listening to men who have cheated, men that know of people that cheated. When you listen to how they speak of it, it lets you know that it has nothing to do with the woman. It's that man's decision to do so. And this is me reasoning through these things were part of what helped me heal.